Hello, Wolfpack back here on Bitcoin. And yesterday we made a video describing the importance of this green box here between 44.4K and 46K. And, believe it or not, Bitcoin's actually held onto that box. And that was something that we didn't really make a prediction for. We just said, if this happens, that's what's going to happen. If this happens, that's going to happen. And essentially we said, if it holds 44.5K, we're going to be in a pretty good position here on Bitcoin. Now, I'm looking at the weekly specifically. Let me bring that up now. As for what it needs to hold, the daily doesn't really concern me too much. I would consider this a pretty neutral daily candle. It looks okay on a surface level, but when you look into it, it's not really all fun and games, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of like a hammer formation, but it's also kind of like a doji formation. It's not really a clear formation here, this last daily candle, and so we can't really derive too much from the candlestick, especially considering inverted hammers are typically bullish patterns as well, and then we've got a hammer formation as well. We've got kind of half a hammer, half an inverted hammer, very neutral formation there. We're not really sure what's going on, but on paper, I mean, if we're speaking about what that candle did, it saw a wick down into the supply region, demand region, and we brought it up and we went upwards. So, technically it's bullish. It's good to see. But right now, this candle we're forming right now, we're 4 hours into this candle, is not looking too good. That looks like a bit of a shooting star formation at this point, and, we'll have to see what happens there. But I suppose at this point, looking into predictions too much about whether we're going to hold this zone or not is a bit, irrational. I think we just need to wait and see what happens. It is worth noting the bull market support band is in that zone, so that's a little bit of extra support, making it a bit harder to drop below. Volume on the last daily candle wasn't the worst, mainly because we saw a lot of red volume. Now, I'd say the daily chart's volume is a bit deceiving in regards to that volume. It is a lot of red volume in the last daily candle that pumped up the volume. It wasn't really greatly green, and so I would still say that we're seeing descending green volume here. And, if you look at the 4 hourly chart, you can see that happening, which means, whenever there's an upwards trend here on Bitcoin, it's weakening. And so the downtrends are a little bit stronger than the uptrends still at this point. That makes sense. Believe it or not, we are in an ascending triangle, ascending channel formation, which is a typically bearish formation. A lot of people want to deny that it's that. That's just the case, right? It's clearly an ascending channel formation. We've seen 3 tests at the bottom, 3 tests at the top. We've seen a rejection from a 200-day, as well as a rejection from the top recently. This is a bearish channel formation. And what we can see, generally speaking, is descending volume throughout this entire bearish channel formation, right down the bottom there. And so we're heading upwards gradually, and the volume's going downwards gradually, and that's coming over the course of about 2 months. So to say it's a coincidence is ridiculous, right? This is clearly a bearish formation on a larger time frame. Now, shorter term, what will happen? Very hard to say. What I can say is that if we break the channel by some miraculous stroke of luck, and we break the 200-day and we close above the 200-day in the channel, which at this point is at 48.5K, we will be heading straight towards 53K to 52K, 100%, okay? But if we stay in this channel, the bearishness will come, and take its time to play out, but it will play out because it is bearish, and we will eventually drop below 44.5K, and in that case, we'll be heading downwards to the bottom of the channel and likely breaking to the downside, right? So, very straightforward here on Bitcoin. Let me just break it down one more time. The overall structure is bearish, right? On the chance that we do break bullish here, we will head to 53K, right? On the chance we break bearish, like we are expecting, 30K is the next target. That is kind of the overall structure here on Bitcoin. Now, what would prompt Bitcoin to go upwards, right? Because I've just said the overall structure is bearish. Obviously, we're in a 4-year cycle theory. That's calling for a bear market as well. The overall structure is bearish. What would prompt it to go up? Why would it go up? Well, I don't think it's going to go up, but there is a chance. I'd say there's about a 20% chance it goes up. Why is that? 25% maybe. Why is that? Well, we are seeing an irrational pre-recession pump. Very important. We have seen inverse yield curve inversion. Sorry, bit of stuttering here today. That basically means that, every time that's happened in the past, yield curve inversion, it's happening across multiple different yield curves. There's obviously multiple different ones. Every time that's happened in the past, on the 2 to 10 year yield curve, there has been a recession within 1 year of that happening, okay? That has happened recently, about a week ago it's triggered, and that means there's going to be a recession within 1 year, okay? On top of this, if that wasn't enough information, and this is all connected, obviously, interest rates are rising. Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chairman, has said they're not hesitating to rise interest rates by possibly 50 basis points, which is in about a month they're going to be doing that, most likely. And that would be the first 50 basis points rise in over 20 years, right? So it's very clear we're heading into a recession. Inflation's at a 40-year high, according to the government numbers. I would say it's more at a 70-year high. And so, recession is very, very clear here. If you can't see there's going to be a recession right now, I don't know what to tell you. You just need to look at the data because it's not even in debate anymore. No one's trying to rebate. No one, even the government officials aren't even trying to debate a recession, right? They're actually claiming there's going to be a recession. And so when the government officials are claiming there's going to be a recession, there's going to be a recession, right? Because those people are the most biased you could possibly imagine. So yeah, it's going to be a recession. And if you look back at the charting history, generally speaking, before we see a recession in the months leading up to it, we see an irrational pump on the S&P 500, which is what's been going on now, right? We pumped all the way up from 4,100, all the way up to 4,600. And that's irrational. There's no reason for that to be happening right now, right? There's no reason that this pump happened. What we can say is that it happened right after interest rates were released, which means that essentially people are trying to see one more final pump before the market crashes. Right, that's essentially what it is. The whales are manipulating the market up. One more final pump, get as much retail in as possible, then dump on them, and then they'll wait it out and they'll buy the bottom, right? That's exactly what's happening right now. We see it all the time. And, why is Bitcoin going up, people ask? Well, for the same reason the S&P 500 is going up, right? The S&P 500 is seeing an irrational pre-recession pump, same thing as Bitcoin. Those of you who don't know, Bitcoin is very heavily correlated to the S&P 500. It is not its own uncorrelated individual asset at this point. It's so correlated to traditional markets. Whatever traditional markets do, Bitcoin basically does. People don't like to hear that, but it's the case, right? It's the reality of the situation. Now, obviously, the longer-term structure looks different, that's for sure. But generally speaking, if the S&P 500 is going up, you can probably bet to about a 70% accuracy that Bitcoin is going to be going up as well. And so when we see this pre-recession pump, which we're seeing right now, that's the explanation for Bitcoin going up. And what you'll notice as well is when we saw a few days ago here on the 29th of March, we saw a red candle. On the 29th of March, that marked the top for the Bitcoin and a rejection from the 200-day before we dropped down to 44K, right? It's very correlated. And so if this pre-recession pump continues and we keep going up to all-time highs, Bitcoin will be breaking out. The only problem is that is a fake out, right? Because the pre-recession pump obviously isn't actually a constitution of actual valid price action. And so when it finally does flop, say we get up to here and it finally collapses, and then people realize, hey, this is a scam, and everyone starts selling, the whale starts selling, and the top goes in, Bitcoin's going to do the same thing. And it's not going to matter whether we got to 53K or not. The point is, it was a fake rally, right? I'm going to keep repeating that message over and over again until it plays out, because I know that's going to happen. I know that's going to happen whether it gets to 53K or whether it tops out at 48, Now, one of the more interesting charts we're going to be looking at here today is the weekly chart on Bitcoin. For those of you who don't know, my prediction on Bitcoin at this point, until invalidated, is, and it hasn't been invalidated yet, going to be we're heading down towards the 200-week SMA, and we're going to be getting there by around November to December this year, 24K. That is my prediction. Now, on the weekly chart, we have taken back the 50-week SMA, which is historically a pretty good sign for Bitcoin. However, this red candle here is challenging that, and if we close the weekly candle in 2 days below 45.7K, which is a relatively likely scenario, it's not that far away from us, we will lose that 50-week again, and we will be heading back downwards into the bear market lows for sure. Now, we see compression on the Bollinger Bands right now, which means that a move is on the way. That is very important, right? The consolidation in this ascending channel pattern is coming to an end according to the weekly chart. That's a very important piece of evidence there. Now, as for where we will go, that's, as I said, it's a different question. I'd say the structure's bearish, but there's things that aren't in my control right now. As an analyst, I can't predict whether an irrational pump, such as the irrational price action that happens for a recession, is going to go on, because it's irrational, right? It's not rational, so you can't predict it. So anyone who says they know what's going to happen next on Bitcoin in the short term is kind of just lying to you, because you can't predict irrationality. That's just what it is. But what I am seeing here on Bitcoin and on the weekly chart here on Bitcoin is the similarities between 2018 are still present. Now, those of you who don't know, we are following the 2018 price action basically exactly. I could pull the fractal out. I do it every video. I'm not going to do it today. But this region here in the bear market in 2018 applied to this region here in this current year, and also the end of 2021 looks identical if you scale it. And right now we're seeing very similar price action in regards to the MACD as well. What we saw in 2018 was a sharp kind of entrance to a MACD cross, right, as we test the 50-week SMA. Okay, you can see the red line test and the MACD cross, and then we flattened out, and then we crashed, okay? We saw a sharp entrance to a MACD cross, and if we close this red, we will flatten out, and then we will eventually crash on Bitcoin. So, very intense similarities to 2018. And I suppose to summarize the whole video, 44.5k is for critical region. On the upside, 48.5k is for critical region. I would say this structure is bearish according to the TA. If the TA plays out honestly, we should be going downwards. However, if the pre-recession pump continues on the S&P 500, there's really no telling what's going to happen, and we could actually be retesting 53k before a crash. But overall, I'm still bearish on Bitcoin. I don't think this market is in a favorable position at all, and I think that, honestly, this is a big bull trap. That's my personal opinion, but we could go higher with that said by rationality. Who knows at this point? Let's see what happens. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.